Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar today. I'm Tony and I'm Wired's Digital Marketing Trainer. We'll start off this session with a little bit more information about Wired Marketing in case you haven't dealt with us before. We're a full service email marketing agency specialising in email marketing. Our clients range from small businesses to large PLCs and everything in between. We offer managed services through an agency style setup for clients who want to outsource their email marketing strategies, as well as offering support and training to clients who would prefer to create email templates and campaigns before sending them themselves. Whether you're looking for a bespoke template, do-it-yourself email sends, or full campaign strategy and implementation, we can support you to success. Now, my own experience spans over 20 years, during which time I've been involved with digital marketing projects which range from small, highly targeted postcode specific campaigns to full national and multinational integrated marketing strategies. I've worked across a number of B2B and B2C sectors. I love sharing what I've learned through that time. So that's what you need to know about us. We'll now move on to the webinar. We always have a broad spectrum of attendees at our webinars. And the main aim of this webinar is to give you an introduction to the drag and drop email campaign builder in the Wired Marketing system. The webinar should run for about 30 minutes. You can contact me directly after the webinar finishes if you have any questions or if you want to have more of an in-depth conversation. So first of all, we'll log into the system. So this is the initial screen that you'll find once you're logged in. It's the email dashboard. So there's quite a lot of information on the front page. The main things for us regarding this webinar are in the top corners here. So we've got create new campaigns, send a one-off email campaign, or the new program, which is start a new marketing program. There's two ways we can actually get to set up a new campaign. We can use the initial buttons there, or we can highlight campaigns and then click on new campaign, which is what we'll do. So the system then takes us to an extra page which asks us to pick a template or import our own. So we can upload our own templates if we have them already created. We can copy from a sent campaign, which saves a little bit of time if you're sending quite similar campaigns as one-offs. We can look at the templates that we've already downloaded, or sorry, uploaded through this tab. But the initial tab that we're opened on is to pick a blank template using one of the presets there, or a completely blank one from scratch. Or we can use one of quite a few default templates that are in the system there for your reference as well. Now, when we're looking at the templates, we can select one straight away if we're wanting to use that particular one. What we can do is actually preview it. So if we click on preview, we can then get a good idea of what it looks like already to see if it fits in what we're wanting to do. So for this webinar, we'll actually use the Mountain Escapes template. These are all mobile responsive templates as well. So we click on select and we're now asked to give the campaign a name. It's best to stick with the usual naming conventions if you do have them set up for your folders and such, but for the purpose of this we'll just call it test 2. Now we can also save the location of this campaign in individual folders if we've got them set up. With this being a test account, we've just got campaigns set up, but something we'll cover in a later webinar. So we've given it a name, we're saving it in the campaigns folder. We now click continue. The system does a little bit of whizzing and whirring and then takes us through to a campaign setup page. So this is where we start building our campaigns. So not quite in the drag and drop editor yet, but this is where we set up the initial parts of the campaigns. So first of all, we're asked to put in a subject line. Now, again, it's going to be a topic of a future webinar. There's a lot goes into creating the best subject lines and best practice and whether to include personalization and dynamic content and that side of things. But initially, this is your first contact. This is your first way of getting that recipient to open the email. So it needs to be something quite catchy. But again, for the purposes of this webinar, we'll just call it test. As you can see, when we input that data, it then starts feeding through into the preview. So we can see roughly what it's going to look like when it's delivered to the inbox. We can also include elements of personalization in there as well, which are based on the data sets that we've got in the system. So then we can include that if we wanted to do so. We then look at the friendly from name. So again, this is another way of us getting a little bit more trust and awareness in the recipient themselves as to who the email's coming from. If you have regular sales reps or contacts that people will deal with, it may be worth including that as a friendly from name just for the familiarity. It might improve the chances of the email getting opened. Again, we can pull in from data sets using the little tag and the @ sign there. If we've got the data in the system, we can use it as the friendly from name as well, as I say, if it's a sales rep or a particular contact. But for this purpose, we'll call it Tony Test. So as you can see, again, it updates in the preview there. The select from address. Now this is the default address unless you've got a separate dedicated IP address for this. Again, would it be the test account? We've just got the one in there to choose from, but you may have several depending upon your account. We're then asked to, if we want to put in an optional forwarding address. Now anyone who replies to your email campaigns, those messages are stored in the system. However, what you can also do is input an optional forwarding address, which is sent, obviously if that's your address, it'll be sent straight through to you as well. The system will still keep a record of the replies, but it just means that you get a copy through. It's a little bit quicker than having to log back into the system to look at them. So we can leave that one blank for our purposes today. And then campaign tags. This is a good way of keeping tags on what's going through, especially for reporting purposes as well. So you may want to include a couple of tags, such as a newsletter. In July, as it's popped up there, we could have anything really that's going to make it stand out and can put it into a group for your reporting purposes. So that's the initial setup details. We've then got a couple of options in the top right hand side here. First of all, you can see 5 stages or 5 breadcrumbs. And this is the 5-stage process of creating an email through the system itself. So this is the initial creation stage. We then move on to the content, which is where the drag and drop editor comes in. We then got tests, that's the test send. Contacts, so this is where we decide who we're sending the emails to, and then a final send as well. It's worth bearing in mind though, once you've actually created the email, created the content, and sent the test send, at that stage then the template itself is sort of set in stone, so you can't really go back. But yeah, at this stage we're on create. So first of all, we have split test settings. So what we can do here is decide whether we want to split test at all, and if so, whether we want to test subject lines, friendly from name, creative, or from address. Again, it's entirely up to us which we choose. From address split test would only happen if we've got more than one option in the select from address here. But it's always worth testing at least maybe subject lines and your friendly from name initially. So we click on the ones we want to test and then we click apply. We also have campaign settings. So these are a little bit more in depth again. So the initial format that comes through as the default is HTML and plain text. If we wish to do so, we can create just a plain text only version without the HTML option. Obviously that means we then can't track opens, that sort of thing. And it also, as you'll see shortly, if we click on it, it takes away the option to split test as well, with not being something with the reporter. So we'll keep it as default as HTML and text. Then we've got an option underneath for standard or triggered campaigns. Now a standard campaign is a standalone email that can be sent out as a one-off. The triggered email, however, is what we'd use in our automation programs, again, which is going to be a topic for a later webinar. But for now, we'll keep it as standard because it's not going to be triggered on specific automation programs. And then we can choose dynamic content if we wish to do so in the subject line or from name. As you can see, it updates that side there, and then we can add new variations. So if we want to send to male or female contacts, or if we want to send it to specific segments and change the subject line based on those. And the same happens for the from name as well. We can again test those and send different options out, different variations out to different parts of our audience as well, just to make it a little bit more personalised. But for now, we'll keep those as they come as default. So once we're happy that that looks as we want it to, we're happy that it's going to represent the email in its best light, really. We then click on save and continue. this then takes us through to the drag and drop builder. So what it's doing now is just downloading the initial template, the Mountain Escapes template that we had. So now we've got the drag and drop builder open. So as you can see, there's again a slightly different format as to how you actually see it when it's sent itself, and that initial preview that we saw. And this is because we're now looking at it as a components and elements point of view, so much more sort of a graphical design wireframe, if you will. And you can see that the initial email itself is there. We've got lots of different columns. So we've got 2-column layout, a 1-column layout, 5-column layout. There's images and text. It can look a little bit complicated, but the actual process of creating an email is quite straightforward. So down the left-hand side, we've got building blocks. So they are what they are. So text building block, if we can just drag and drop it into a specific point where we want it on the template itself, it's just as it says it is. So we can input text as to however we want to put in there. Very similar is the formatting of the text. So we've got drop downs for the web safe fonts that we can use. We can change the size, we can change the colours, and obviously not just the standard colours, we can choose whichever colours we need to match. We've then got bold, italic, underlined, strike through, your superscript, your justification, alignments, line heights, and bullet points. So the text box is what it is. You can drag and drop the text box in. Next we've got image. So we'll just click on there to delete that. So next is an image box. So again we can drag that in, and it is again what it says it is, an image box. And what we can do is use that to drag in an image, and it will place it into the box there. So again, quite a straightforward box explaining exactly what it is. The image and text box is a little bit different format. So here we've got space for an image and also space for the text next to it. So again, what we can do is just drag the images in. We can change the format and the text in there to match what we need it to do. Text and image is exactly the same as image and text, just in the opposite really, the mirror image. So we've got text first and then the image next to it there. Now button is a later addition to the system, and what we can do is include buttons in the email template. Before this was included, what you'd have to do would be to drag a text box in and then format that text box to make it look like a button. Now we've actually got the button itself, and when we click on that, it takes us through to another sub tab, and we can add a link, which is what we would want to do with a sign up now, a register now button, and it gives us a lot of different options there that we can actually use. So we can just put in a standard hyperlink, we can put in an email link, so add a link to an email address, we can forward to a friend, forward to a preference center, unsubscribe, view in browser, opt-in, double opt-ins, we can add anchors, we can also link to documents, microsites, landing pages and surveys as well. So for your standard buy now button, usually it would be just a general hyperlink, and then you just complete the details for the URL, the link groups and the link name for tracking, and you can click on do not track if that's the case as well, and that would sort of set up that button, if you will. We can also change things like the borders, the border width, border radius on there, and the padding minimum width as well. So there's quite a lot of ways of changing the formatting of those buttons themselves. So going back to the build tab, the last thing we've got here is video. So although we can't embed a full video, what we can do is actually set up a video using a link from, say, a YouTube channel, a YouTube video itself. And what it'll do is it'll actually create what looks to be a video player in the body of the email itself, but what it actually is just an image that's taken from that video as a thumbnail, and then it links through when you click on it from the email itself, it'll take you through to that particular YouTube page or wherever the videos come from. So it's a nice way of making it look as if the video is actually embedded in your email, but it's not taking up the memory that a full embedded email would. So they're the sort of responsive content that we've got there, the content that we can fill in and change images. Underneath here we've also got columns and spaces. So these are just exactly as they explain again. So as you can see here, we've got a one column setup. We can drag a one column in, and it's the width of the email wide. If dragging two columns, again, you'll see that you've got two columns to then drag and drop certain PCU content in. So maybe you can drag text into that side and video into that side there. So again, it's a nice way of formatting clearly the email that you want it to set up and make it look as you want it to. I do recommend using the column setups rather than maybe using tables, really from the mobile responsive point of view. Using the columns means it's a lot clearer as to how things need to stack if you're looking at mobile responsive design, if you're looking on a mobile device. Again, in the next webinar, we're going to be actually creating emails and going through that in a lot more depth as to how they work and how stacking works. For the purpose of this webinar, really is just to give you a very brief introduction to each of the options that we've got. So the columns go up to 8 columns if you wish to do so. We can also include spaces. Now, this is a spacer here with the checkered squares, and what it does is it just adds a little bit of space between the elements on the email themselves. Again, just to make it much more appealing to the eye, and you're not having to use padding around the boxes, and you're actually having a space one which does that job for you and just gives a little bit of space between. So underneath there we've got tools. Now these are slightly more interactive elements that you can add into your emails themselves. So first of all, we've got RSS feeds. So if you wanted to include a live feed through to your latest blog posts, what you can do is you can drag and drop that tool into the column itself or wherever you want it to put it, and then you can set up the RSS feed there using the URL from the feed, the number of items that you want them to show, link text, read more, or use the title for that's dragging through from the RSS feed, and you can also refresh feed on each send as well. So that's a nice little tool to use to keep fresh content from your blogs on the emails themselves. We can also include sharing options. Now, what these are social sharing, so you can choose whether there's going to be a Facebook logo in there, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, Delicious, Reddit, or StumbleUpon. So if you've got accounts set up with those, you can actually, or if the user's got accounts set up with those, they can share your email on those channels using the option that drops in there. We've got social links, so it's always worth trying to overlap the social media and your emails themselves, and you do that through using social sharing and social links as well. Now, whereas social sharing actually allows people to share on their own networks, the social links actually takes them, if you click on the logo, through to your particular page. So if you had your Facebook page was wide marketing, wide training, you could just include that in there. And then the URL, when they click on it, they'll go through to that. And there's quite a lot of options there for the social links. So you can again take them to your blog, your Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, etc. So again, a nice way of overlapping between email and social media itself. We've then got two extra options. So we've got dynamic content and external dynamic content. So as we briefly discussed in the subject titles, what you can do is use dynamic content to send different content out to different segments of your audience based on rules that you set. A new variation there. Choose a data field, so say it's the client type, if it was prospect, include that there. And then if that's in your data field, and you've got that data, you can then change how it looks and what content's in that particular box based upon those rules. So if a prospect you want to get a video, you can include video there. You can then change the variation to somebody who's an existing customer who might just get a text box or a thank you message, something like that. So again, it updates as to where they are in the data fields, where they are in the segments, and then they'll get that content that you've decided to give them based on those rules that you've set. External dynamic content is very, very similar, apart from it draws from the content from another source. So as you can see, we set the address and URLs and the link groups there for that. So that's the basics of the parts and the elements that we can use as building blocks. Now, as you can see underneath, we've got a My Building Blocks option. And what this is basically when you've created, say, a block here with the image, the new tents now in stock, the content and the button, if you actually like that and think you'll use that over and over again, rather than having to set it up every time that you want to create an email campaign, what you can do is actually use this option and drag it across to the building blocks. What it'll do is it'll then save it, whatever title you want to call it, so we'll call it Freeze of Use, New Tents Now in Stock. We can save that, and that block now stays in our building blocks. So if we want to use it again, all we need to do is just drag it and drop it in, and as you can see, it will include that content back in there again. So based upon what we're dragging in. And there's the new tent. So again, it depends where you're dragging it and dropping it. But yeah, you've got the option there then to reuse some of those content blocks that you've already created if it's going to be a thing that's quite a regular inclusion in your email campaigns. Just saves you a lot of time and effort doing it over and over again. So once we've gone through those, we can then look at images. So this is obviously where we can manage and store our images for our campaigns. So if we click on Manage, it then gives us all the images that we've already got on the system. We can use the slider to increase the size of them if we wish to do so. We can put them in a list format. It's entirely what you feel comfortable using and how you want it setting out. But what we can do is hover over the images and it will give us the name of the image, the folder that it's in, the size of it, the width, the height, and when it was uploaded. This is quite important. When you're using images in emails, the email size itself has to be around 100 kilobytes in size. Anything more than that is then potentially going to get stuck in spam filters and potentially not delivered. So this really helps us by keeping the size of our images down to a minimum, really. So we've got the sizes there. So what we'd always recommend is basing the images that you use on the size of the block that they're going in, rather than purely just downloading a very high definition image from your website, for argument's sake, and then trying to get that into an email. Because what you can do is you can actually resize the images. But although we can resize them, it's not actually going to let us, it's not going to change the resolution, so the size of that image is always going to be the same memory wise, as opposed to just purely the size of the image. So we can see the image here, we can actually change the size of it, and it will show you, as we can see there, the size of the pixels, but the resolution of that image is always going to stay the same, so it will always take up the same memory. So that's worth bearing in mind with images. Again, we cover that in much more detail in a later webinar when we're looking at images and the image management suite itself. But for our purposes, again, for this, it's a very brief overview of the fact that you can download your images using the plus button. Download your images through there. It'll save them into folders if you wish to do so, that you've set up for each campaign or a specific topic that you might be using. And then to use the images, all you need to do again is just drag and drop, and it'll drop that image wherever you want to do it. So they're the content blocks that we can use, the building blocks, and just a very brief overview on images. Now, there's a few options on top of the blocks that we're inputting into the email campaigns themselves. First of all, the crosshair there, if you will. Once we hover over it, it does tell you what it does. So you can move that element. So if you don't want it there, you can just drag it and drop it to another section, and then it will move it for you. So that's how we sort of move content around that way. We've then got to duplicate this element. So again, if we click on this, it'll actually duplicate what we've got. And again, as you can see, it's duplicated that image there. And if we want to remove that, we just click on the cross itself. So this works for columns and individual elements as well, all the same commands there. So as I say, all the email templates on the system existing are mobile responsive. And what we can do is, once we've created the email itself, we've got it looking as if we're quite happy with it. What we can do is actually use the preview button. What this does is it gives us a good estimation of what that email campaign is going to look like on each sort of device. So we've got the desktop devices, we've got tablets, and we've got the mobile phones or smartphones. So desktop, as you can see, it looks pretty much as we saw in the preview before we selected this template. And as you can see, it's actually taken all the wireframes out of it now as well. So it's a good way of looking as you're going along to make sure that the email's looking as you want it to. Then we can check the responsiveness of it. So this is what it'll look like on a tablet in landscape and a tablet in portrait mode. And as you can see, you can scroll through, have a look through, and make sure everything's looking exactly how you want it to. Moving on to the mobile device. So again, we've got landscape. We can see, yeah, that's working quite nicely. And the portrait again. Now, when it comes to mobile design, obviously there's certain things we have to bear in mind, and ideally what we'd have is the call to action above the fold. So when we're looking in this example at the mobile phone in landscape mode, our template's not really doing us a lot of favours. The first call to action is at least a good scroll, a good screen or two down. It's going to take a lot of effort to get to that call to action. So what we can do is actually come out of the preview, and we can go down into our styles and look at mobile display. And what we can do here is actually start hiding certain elements to try and get that call to action above the fold. So first of all, we noticed that this block here wasn't playing particularly nicely. So what we can do is actually hide the block itself. Then if we go back into preview and the landscape again on there, you can see it's not clicked through yet. So what we need to do, go back, click on hide this device on mobile devices. So then preview that. Again in the landscape, we can see that the men parts now not there. So all we need to do is go back, rather than choosing the men block itself. We can choose the whole block. It may be easy to go into build first so that we know we've chosen it all. Back down into mobile display and then hide this block. And landscape. So now we can see that that first navigation bar's not showing there, but it is showing still on the desktop devices and the tablet devices. So we're still not quite where we want to be. So what we need to do now is potentially maybe remove the image to get that call to action back where we need it to be. So again, we're going to that block. We choose image itself, choose hide on mobile devices. We can then preview this and go into the landscape mode again. And now we can see we're getting a little bit nearer to where we want to be. We're getting that call to action above the fold. And we can keep doing that with any elements that we think that aren't really required on mobile devices themselves. So that's a nice way of using some of the functionality in there to make it as mobile responsive as we possibly can, whilst considering tablet users and also the desktop users as well. So it takes a little bit of time to work out what you need, what you don't need, but once you've worked that out and you can see how it's going to stack in those mobile devices, you can then start hiding what you need. So that's the build tabs, and we moved a little bit into the styles too. So looking at styles now, this is exactly what it says it is. So we can change background colours. So at the moment we've got the background colour set to there, but we can change it to anything we want to match obviously our brand guidelines or the effects that we're wanting to have. If we don't like what we've done, we can use the undo button, as with a lot of systems, and we can change that back to how it originally was. If we like that particular colour, we can save it, and then it'll put it into our template. We can then change the whole colour theme of the email itself. So this will do exactly what it says it does, and it will change the full template itself. As you can see, the call to action buttons and the backgrounds will all change in the right. So again, if we don't like that, we can just change it back to how it was. We've then got borders and padding. So these work again on all the different elements. So we can maybe look at this text here. We can maybe put a border around it if we wish to do so. As you can see, that's already shown there. We can change the strength of that border. So again, we'll just include that there. As you can see, again, it's just dragging it straight through. That'll also be shown immediately in the preview mode as well. You can then change the padding. So at the moment, the padding here is 10 pixels, but we can change this to, say, 50 pixels. As you can see, that changes it there as well. And we can even add that to the sides if we wish to do so. So again, it's just another way of styling things and making it look and align as you want it to do, making sure that it also works in the devices if you use the preview section there. Mobile display, as I've mentioned, you can actually hide certain images or certain parts to mobile devices, and you can also preserve the size of images on mobile devices if you wish to do that as well, rather than resizing with the size of the device that you're on. And then finally, under the styles, we've got email width. With it being a predetermined template that we're using, we can't change this, but you can actually change it to different sizes if you wish, although the standard is 600 pixels. So they're the build and style functionality that we've got. Now, when it comes to text, as I mentioned before, we format it very, very similar to how we do in Word and the very similar programs for that. But we've got a few extra options here that we can go through just to give you a bit of insight on. The first is a paste option. Now, if you were to, excuse me, if you were to use some text from a website, you cut and paste off the website and copied it and pasted it directly into a template. It usually brings with it little pieces of code that were on the website with it. What that can do is actually change and break the template that you're using, and that works as well if you're building one from scratch. So what you need to do is actually use this cut and paste option here, so you can cut the text itself from the website, use the paste option. If you put it into, copy it into here, and then click on insert, it just removes all that extra coding that might be on the text itself that you don't see, and it ensures that the template will stay as intact as it can based on that text that you've put in. As we mentioned before, links, you can use this to input links. So again, all the different options there. So we've got the hyperlink option, the add a link to an email address, forward to a friend, preference center. Anything that's got the text in like this can be changed as well to something that meets your requirements. You can add a preference center link, unsubscribe, which has to be in all emails anyway that come through the system. Where you put that is entirely up to you, but it does have to include an unsubscribe link somewhere. You don't have to have this default text, you can change that to just unsubscribe if you wish to do so. The view in browser link, so again that is its usual thing that you tend to find at the top of the emails themselves. There's already one in this template as well there. And then the other link options, we've got new anchors, so you can move people up and down the email itself. based on where the anchor text is. You can link to documents, microsites, landing pages, and surveys as well. And all it is a case of just including the links or downloading the documents as per the individual settings on each. We've then got data fields. So again, this is very similar to when we were setting up the subject titles. We can actually include personalization here as well. So if we wanted to include someone's name here, what we can do is get ready for the camping season. If we want their first name to go in there, we click on the data fields, click first name, and then that'll put that little bit of code in there. So now if we preview that, it will put a default in for our purposes now just for the preview. But you can again see where the personalization works, and that's just that little bit of code there. And again, these data fields are based on the data that you have in the system itself. So the more data you have, the more options you'll have to choose from in those data fields. And the final option here is for symbols. So again, if you're cutting and pasting symbols from elsewhere, it sometimes can cause coding issues and rendering issues when the emails are delivered. So for the most used symbols are here. So again, what we can do is we can just literally pick the spot where we want that symbol to go, and then we click on that, and again that makes sure that that goes out and is rendered exactly how we want it to, with the £sign in this instance, rather than some other code that might break the email template itself. So that's the details across most of the drag and drop builder there. There's a few things again across the top here we've not covered yet. First one here is HTML. So although none of this so far has required any HTML coding abilities or any CSS code at all, if there is anything that you do want to add in there, you can then start looking at the HTML code for various sections that you're looking at. If there is anything extra you want to do or any specific tweaking that you would like to do that the system doesn't, but that's very few and far between that you'll need to use that. We've then got the test send button here. So we've used preview, we've got test send. So this again is where we can then start sending emails out to a set of test accounts. So there may be different devices, or hopefully there'll be different devices and different email clients. The more we can send wise that way, the greater the chances we'll know that it's going to actually render in the correct way on every device that our recipients are likely to be using. So that's where we can test send from that section there. And then we've got utilities. So first of all, we've got a spam check option. So we've created the email, we're happy with how it looks. What we can then do is run a spam check through, and it looks through the template that we've got and gives us a score as to how spammy it thinks it looks. Now we do have a few points here, 0.7 out of 5, and what we can do is highlight the parts that it's saying that we need to potentially look at. Because we've not gone through to the next section yet where we create the HTML, the plain text version of this HTML email, it's saying that it looks as if it might be a little bit spammy. Well, that will actually be sorted out when we move on to the next step, which is the sending. So at this point, we've got no concerns with the spam check. We can also look at stats. So this will tell us how many words and characters and sentences we've got. It'll tell us how many links, how many editable images, how many total images, and the email height itself. So again, sometimes useful stats if we're looking at percentage of words to text and that side of email design. A very, very useful option here is links. So rather than having to go through the template one by one and looking at the links and making sure that all the links are pointing to the right place, we can actually use this option, and it drags all the links through that are as part of our email itself. And it'll also flag if there's anything potentially missing from those. So what we can say is on the men option here, so that's going to resort to that one there. You can actually click on view and it will highlight the section that it's referring to. It's telling us there's a missing anchor, so what we can do is edit that. And then, as we can see, we are missing certain parts of this. So we've got the text in the box itself, in the button. We've got the missing anchor, and then we've got the missing text. So what we can do is edit that, and then, as we can see, we are missing certain parts of this. So we've got the text in the box itself, in the button. We've got the missing anchor, and then we've got the missing text. So what we can do is edit that, and then, as we can see, we are missing certain parts of this. but we then don't have the URL. So what we want to do then is include that in there, any potential link groups and link names for tracking, insert that, and then that will get rid of the highlights there. So again, it's a good way of checking that there's no broken links in our emails themselves, and to make sure everything's all above board. We can restore. So as we're going along, best practice is to keep saving now and again, just in case of any system outages, any browser crashes, anything like that. If you do make a few changes and think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, what you can actually do is, as you can see, there's a few autosaves there, but you can actually go back to previous versions of the email campaign itself as you've been building it, and then take it back rather than just undoing everything. You can actually click straight back. So again, quite useful if you do make a few changes, you're just not really happy with them. And the final option here is edit source. So very similar to the HTML version, but this actually gives us the full page source code. So again, if we're feeling technical or if we need to make certain changes that can only be done in the CSS or HTML code itself, we can make those changes in this section here. And then if we need to go back, we can just edit design. And then it takes us exactly back to where we were before. So that is the drag and drop builder. So what we can do now is save and continue. So we've sent our test send already. We've checked the links. And then as I mentioned, on that spam score, it did say that we were missing the plain text version. So what we can do here, again, we've got a few options. All we need to do is just click on that button there, generate plain text, and it'll do that work for us. We can make a few amendments to this if we need to do so, but this is just to ensure that if we're sending that HTML email out, if it can't be delivered in that content, in format for whatever reason, at least the person receiving it is going to be able to get a plain text version of it. So we can save and continue. And we now go on to the test. Send again, contact and send. So that is the drag and drop builder up until the sending point. We'll cover this in a later webinar. But as you've seen, the drag and drop editor enables you to create mobile responsive email campaigns very quickly, very easily, and without the need for coding skills themselves. As you've seen, it's got a very wide range of tools that help you to personalize your campaigns, to easily include interactive and engaging elements as well, such as RSS feeds, video, images, dynamic content. So that's the end of the webinar. I hope that you found it useful and that you now have a better understanding of how flexible and easy to use the drag and drop builder actually is. Our contact details are on screen. At Wired Marketing, we're very open to any questions that you might have. So feel free to contact us if you want to see how Wired Marketing can help you achieve email marketing success, or if you want to have a chat about what you're campaigns at the moment, or any questions that you might have about the system, or in particular in this webinar, the drag and drop builder. So feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to have a chat about that. Our next webinar will be a live session on Friday the 7th of October at 2 p.m. We'll be covering how to design an email from scratch using the drag and drop builder, so going into a little bit more depth as to how we can actually start templating and creating those emails from the base up. To register to attend, please visit our website. Finally, the Wired team and I would like to thank you for attending our webinar today. We wish you every success with your email marketing. Thank you very, very much for attending. We hope to see you at one of our future webinars. Goodbye.